Today we're going to hear a story of loss, hope, and grace as TJ Anglin shares his story with us today. TJ, welcome to Faith is Labor. So nice to have you. It took us long enough, but we finally got you.
We made it. We made it.
We made it, yes. And I just, I created this show to bring people here that, maybe nobody knows who they are, but if Jesus is alive in you, you have a story to tell. And I know you have a very, very good story to tell us today and just how God worked in your life. So first off, let's just talk about you for a little bit. What was your upbringing like? What was that like for you?
About 11 years old, my parents ended up getting a divorce. So that kind of gave me a bad taste in my mouth for ministry for a moment. And I kind of, not to skip ahead, but kind of got back into the faith world through a girl. And
wait, what was the correlation there? Why did that leave a bad taste in your mouth?
Because my parents were involved heavily in ministry, and some of the things that happened with other people in ministry.
Got it.
So
you got to give us all the details there.
Do the helicopter.
That's not awesome, but how did you come out of that? A lot of people watching right now, their parents broke up. I know I wasn't raised with both my parents.
Yeah.
But how did you deal with it?
So it was such a shock to have a Christian home where you're waking up to this breakfast being cooked and this worship music going, and to one day you're waking up to smelling cigarette smoke and just a whole change of environment.
Wow. How did you deal with that?
I think that's the big issue. I wasn't mature enough to know how to deal with it, so I just went along with it. And I stepped back from church, but my father, after about a year's time, got back into church, and he dragged me in one day. And there was this lady who invited me to a Sunday school classroom, and I didn't want to go, but I saw this other young lady at the table. She introduced herself.
Incentive?
She introduced herself, so automatically I fell in love with Jesus again.
Now, okay, that's one story. That's one way to look at it.
Right.
But when did your faith really become your own?
When I was young, 6 years old, and I felt like that was the purest form of faith that I had.
Really?
So I think it was more developing how much my faith is not my own, and learning through a process that it's only by God's grace that I even have the ability to have a faith, And so when did I quit adopting my parents' philosophy and come up with my own? Through a process.
Yeah.
But when did I discover my faith was not my own and I couldn't conjure it up within me, but I needed someone bigger and greater than me to actually give me faith? That was through a life process.
Yeah. Amen. And everybody's walk looks so different, we all have the things that we struggle with and the things that happen in our lives that really draw us closer to God. And I'm sure you experienced that for yourself.
Yeah, just like I said, going through the divorce, meeting the young lady who later became my wife.
Oh.
So I was 11 years old at the time, and I dated.
Wow, so you met her when you were 11 years old?
Yeah, I met her when I was 11 years old. Yeah.
And oh my gosh, please don't, did you know that she was the one, at 11 years old? How is that even possible?
I don't know if I know she's the one, but she was
really,
definitely the one, and there was no other competitors for years, so she ended up being the one. Yeah.
So when did you pop the question? How did that happen?
So being raised in the church world, I didn't know that people, in this generation, they actually wait longer to get married. So I proposed when I was 19 years old.
Wow.
We ended up getting married when I was 21 years old.
Did anybody try to talk you out of it? They're like, no, you're too young.
My dad tried to talk me out of it, and his theory was if he could talk me out of it, then I wasn't committed enough to it.
Wow.
So I guess it was his strategy. So I was committed, and we still made it happen.
That's a really good theory. I like that. So tell me about your marriage to her. What was it like?
Yeah, I was with her more of my life than without her. So I didn't know life without her, really, you know. It was just such a new season. So we became best friends, business partners, worked in ministry together. We did, kids ministry, and we became assistant pastors, and later became pastors. So
So you guys were heavy involved in ministry, just
all
sold out.
All about it.
And what was her name?
Letta.
Letta.
Yeah.
Okay, so she ended up pregnant.
Yeah.
You had
22.
You had a baby.
At 22.
At 22. What was that experience like?
It was awesome. I don't know if other parents would agree with me, but I still, to this day, my son just had a birthday. He's 11, and I tell him, I don't love you most, but I love you first.
Aww.
Because there's something special about the first,
Amen.
just that first experience of holding him, not knowing, and so it's a real precious moment, the blessing of the first. So it was real beautiful.
I love that. And was there anything different or particular about, her pregnancy, her delivery?
No, everything went smooth and good and right on schedule. She had him a few weeks early, but no difficulties or anything like that. Yeah.
Okay. Now let's talk about the baby number 2.
Grayson.
Grayson
Judah. Grace in
Judah.
praise.
Oh, I love that. That's so cute.
Yeah.
That's such a pastor name to give your child.
It was that or Jonah.
So tell me about when you guys found out that you were pregnant again for the second time. And
yeah, so the second time was, the typical coming home from work and having a letter and with the results of the pregnancy test. And
were you guys trying?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. yeah.
Okay, and then, so the pregnancy, how did that go with the second one?
It was normal. Everything seemed to be fine all the way up to scheduling our day to go in and have Grayson. So we came to Scripps La Jolla, and we went in that night, and she was going to be induced, and then so we were actually going to stay the night and have the baby in the morning. But in the middle of the night, she woke up and she cried my name, and then I ran over to her. She kind of her eyes rolled back, and she fell back, and they start calling code blue, and the doctors started rushing in. And
wow.
What's interesting is a family from the church last night had a heart surgery. So I went there, and it was at the same hospital.
No.
Yeah, so I actually went and
wow.
visit the waiting room and visit the room.
Right before you were going to be on the show.
Yeah, exactly. So it's been 6 years, 4 days, and it was just a really interesting feeling to kind of get those images back and kind of go revisit that place. And
okay, let's rewind for a second.
yeah,
though.
absolutely.
When you went in to deliver this baby, the second baby that you guys had, did you feel prepared for what was about to take place?
To have a baby, or
yeah.
I mean, yeah.
You felt like
I felt good.
You felt like, yeah, this is my second time around, my second baby.
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
I'm ready. So take me back step by step through that day of when you lost your wife.
Yeah, just starting at the hospital, just going there yesterday, remembering the nurse actually coming out and meeting us in the lobby and asking that question, are you guys excited for today? And, just the normal talk, and taking us up to the room and us kind of, getting comfortable there. And then we were there several hours. Some friends came by, visited with us, and they left after, some conversation. And then we're just kind of relaxing, and my youngest son, oldest son, came in. He was 5 years old at the time, and he made an interesting comment. He said, are you gonna come home? And then he made her promise that nothing would happen to her.
Wow.
And then she gave him a kiss. She promised him, and then my mom took him out. And then within 2 hours, she sets up TJ, and then all the chaos.
Wow.
Started to happen. And in that chaos, all this stuff started unveiling in me, and the Matthew 26 of my whole life being in ministry, wanting ministry, and I got this saying came to me: whatever you're anxious for is God's revelation to you that you're not ready for it. Because everything that I can envision and that I wanted, all in that moment didn't really matter. And so I'm there and I'm like, God, never mind. I don't want to do this anymore. Like I'm checking out. And this statement burned in my heart, burned in my spirit, burned in my mind, and said, never has there been a man greatly used by God who has not experienced a great level of suffering. Never has there been a man greatly used by God who has not experienced a great level of suffering. And just trying to get out of the whole situation, he brought to my mind Matthew, where he was in the garden, he had the cup, and he said, cause this cup to pass. No, you got to drink ye all of it.
Yeah.
So God began to really just minister to me the part of life I didn't quite understand, the suffering part.
And I mean, you're not alone,
Yeah.
It really brings tears to my eyes because I know there's so many people watching right now that have experienced loss
Yeah.
of some kind, and
Mm-hmm.
it's not easy. It's not anything that anybody wants to go through, but we share in his sufferings.
The fellowship of his suffering. I say you never meet a stranger who suffered. So when I meet other people who's lost a spouse, it's like, hey, it's like I've known you forever.
Really?
Yeah.
So tell me about, okay, so you find out she's dead and you have to face your children and tell them that their mom is gone. How did you deal with that?
Well, it's, they're working on her for like 45 minutes. So in that process, me and God were having this big talk, all this revelation and download of God dealing with me in that moment. And, me discovering my PTSD, like you're helpless.
Mm-hmm.
First you're fighting to try to save her, then you're helpless to save her. And then, the analogy that I give is if a wolf caught a rabbit, first thing the rabbit does is he runs. But when the rabbit can't get away, because the wolf has the rabbit in the mouth, he tries to fight. But when he realizes he's not as strong as the wolf, it is natural for him to go limp. And it's the same thing for us.
Wow.
Even drunk drivers, often when they get in a wreck, they'll go limp. It's our biology. So often, I didn't go in the room one night. I lived in the room for many months and years. And it would just take a moment or a memory to take me back to the room.
Wow.
And so, and part of the process and experience of that room was bringing my son back and explaining to him what happened. And all the preachers, everybody in life, they always have an answer for you. But I realized in that moment, nobody had an answer for me. And I said, man, your sermon prep is incomplete right now. The doctors, your education is incomplete. You can't even tell me if I should tell my son or how to tell my son about his mother right now. So I had to depend on the grace of God. What should I do? And I realized that the grace of God allows us to be real before trying to be right. So instead of trying to do the right thing, I get to be real before God. So I said, you know what? I'm just going to be honest with my son. Come here. Your mother passed away. And I showed him, and then what he would used to do, he would tickle her feet to try to wake her up. So he started tickling her feet. And so for a couple minutes, that kind of played out, and he was pushing her, and then he just sat up on my lap, kind of like this cold feeling just kind of laid in my chest and start crying.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, obviously we know that she's with the Lord and that God called her home. But in that moment, like, what went wrong? Because a normal pregnancy, from getting to the doctor, you were about to deliver a baby.
Yeah.
What do you think, in your opinion, in your human mind, what do you think went wrong?
Well, they said it was a AFE, which is a amniotic fluid embolism, where the fluid from the sac gets into the bloodstream. So it's 1 in 40,000 women that actually experience that.
And what did the healing process look like for you, TJ?
I have a new view of healing, and sometimes I think broken looks more healed than healing does. This is not a very popular quote, but Spurgeon would say that health is a blessing, but sickness even greater so. And I know what he's talking about, because you don't really value things like you should value when you're completely whole in yourself. So Job 42:12 said, after he had lost everything, said the second half of his life was greater than the first half of his life. And I'm like, why was it greater in the second than the first? Did he have better kids? You know, because he got 10 more kids? Were they nicer? But I realized the better half was the half that he understood from his brokenness, the revelation he got from his brokenness, because now I have 10 kids that I'm not going to be on the cell phone. I'm going to look in their eyes. I'm going to show up to their soccer game, and I'm going to be there for them. And so now I get to appreciate life and the things around me and the relationships that he's entrusted to me in just a whole brand new way. And so the broken you is the better you.
Yeah.
And it makes me sad because what we call healing is really this hardening of the heart. And the hard heart breaks easy, but the gospel somehow keeps softening my heart and bringing me to remember my brokenness. Amen. And trusting my brokenness and depending on him and not becoming stronger and stronger apart from God, but becoming more dependent upon the strength of God.
Amen. Now tell me about your children. How are you able to parent them without, you know, their mom?
Yeah, so the first 3 years, I would say, there was a lot of easy outs. So like my mom called me, you know what, if you want me to take him in, you know, I didn't have any family from San Diego, so they're offering me, why don't you move here? Why don't you do this? And I just felt at that moment like that the easy route was not the right route, and that I just had to face it, embrace the pain, lean in.
Wow.
And just,
that takes a lot of courage, TJ.
It takes a lot of grace.
You are courageous and grace, amen.
Yeah.
And you know, I noticed in your Instagram post, you use that word grace a lot. You hashtag grace.
Yeah.
Explain why you do that.
Because I realize how incapable I am. And I think when people think they're pulling it off, they tend to live that way. But when you're the rabbit in the wolf's mouth, and the only way that you're going to survive is through surrender, and you see how faithful God is in your surrender, and that he comes and takes you from the mouth of the wolf and restores you, that in order to heal, what you need to do is learn how to be rescued really well. So I haven't learned 10 steps on what I should do to be healed. I've learned how to be rescued. Help. So staying in the posture of dependence.
Amen. Amen. And now you remarried to your new wife, Carissa, right?
Yeah.
And tell me about your new marriage.
So even how I met her is when my first wife passed away, Pastor Sergio, he called me from San Diego, Cornerstone Church. He called me and he allowed me to use the facility for the funeral and took me in. So the ministry I was working at, I took a sabbatical and never came back, never went to the church again. And I found Cornerstone. They had the dark worship. It was big, and I'm like, I'm gonna go hide there. Like I'm gonna go hide. And because it's dark enough, I'm just gonna go cry. I'm gonna sit in 5 services in the dark, and I'm gonna cry. I'm gonna put my kids in childcare, and I'm gonna take them out for lunch. So I would go every Sunday, and just do that. And I started going to their staff meetings. I was just trying to occupy my mind. And one day they were having a staff prayer meeting, and you know, they're walking around, and I saw different ladies just declaring the will of God and you know, going after it. And then I saw this other lady in the corner, and she had a posture of meekness, and you could just tell she was like really talking to God, you know. And this saying came to mind: the way that a woman talks to God is the way she'll communicate with her husband. And I saw her, and I was like, if I ever get married again, I want to get married to somebody like that. Amen.
You're making me cry.
Because I heard the other ones with it, Jesus, get down here and bless me. I heard, TJ, get down here and get this done. But when I saw the posture of like, I want to serve God, you know, and a heart of humility, I was like, if I ever get married again, I want to get married to somebody like that. And then over time, that somebody like that was Pastor Sergio's daughter. So what was really cool and interesting is I was approached by his wife, and when she was 27 years old, she lost her first husband, and she had 2 daughters. And so I was 27 years old and I lost my wife
Wow.
and had 2 sons.
Wow.
And so I ended up having to marry one of the daughters.
Wow.
And what God showed me is like, because I didn't want to date and mess up my kids more because they'd already been through so much, so I didn't want to take chances.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I'm going to discern the grace on someone's life before I date the personality.
Amen.
Because the personality is going to change, but when somebody's dying of cancer and they have nothing to offer you, it's going to be the grace of God.
Amen.
That magnet of grace that drew you together, that's actually going to have the power and capability to keep you together.
Amen.
And so there was girls with lots of chemistry, and they were nice, and they were laughing, and we connected at some level, and they were great for me. And then there was some that was good for me, but there was only one that was graced for me.
Grace.
Grace for me. So
and now you guys are expecting your third child together.
Third child.
That is so awesome. And
Yeah.
I just love how God can just make all things new, like
Yeah.
the Word of God says. But TJ, we're running out of time here, but I really want you to speak to our viewers right now. Your story is so inspiring. You came out on top. You were able to overcome. And in your brokenness, like you said,
Yeah.
stay broken, people, because that's where God can really work. But speak to them right now. Maybe, they lost somebody that they love.
Yeah.
And, we have the holidays right now. It's a really tough time for a lot of them. Speak to them right now really quick.
Yeah, so Job's friends, they were trying to help Job, and they did a great job until they started talking. And so many times words fall short of trying to minister to our suffering. And so many times we're trying to find the answer. But what if we started entrusting? What if you started entrusting your questions to God? Instead of trying to find answers to, control the world so you don't feel that anxiety or out of control. What if it was okay? What if grace gave you permission? And what if you were sent to earth to actually be a human? And the tears that you cry, actually God keeps in this beautiful bottle, and he's going to redeem every tear. And your brokenness and your sorrow is not something that you run from, but it's something that, if you can't get out of bed because you're so depressed, you're in the perfect posture for God's grace to raise you up. If you're trying to stay busy and do it yourself, you're going to fail miserably. But I promise you, God is faithful. His grace is sufficient. At the end of yourself is the beginning of God's extravagant grace. And I want to give you permission to heal, but you'll never get there if you don't first feel the permission to hurt. And you have permission to hurt. And you be the hurter and let God be the healer. Let God do what only God can do and see you through your brokenness.
Amen.